Hello, it's May 2022, and this video is inspired by a YouTuber by the name of Steve Lado, and I believe he also goes by Lado's Law, and he is a lawyer out of Michigan, and he primarily talks about Michigan law, but those laws, just like in Canada, can go across country, and even what he talks about can and does parallel, for example, Canada directly. So this video, he was talking about police stopping you, searching your vehicle, for example, and seizing whatever they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason they want. And everyone knows, or should know, that in theory, I'm emphasizing the word theory, that police need reasonable and probable grounds. Now, this expands into, well, a topic that I've talked about extensively, even recently, about busybodies. And you have a busybody making an uninformed conclusion, calling the police, thinking that they saw something that didn't exist, and things get escalated, and people do die from these encounters because, for example, someone says, oh, this person had a weapon. They had a broom in their hand, and the police go there all already heightened up, being trained by the wrong people and paranoid and everything, and the person holding a broom sweeping their steps at their house gets shot. And then it's like, oops. Anyway, I'm digressing here. But for example, going back to more on topic here, I'm going to tie this into my story, where police officers need reasonable and probable grounds. Now, there's something called a pretext stop, which in Canada as well is unlawful. And what that is, basically, a police officer will stop you, or if you're already stopped, they will approach you under the pretext of another made-up law, or perhaps you are doing something wrong, and you're speeding, but they'll use that, whether it's be made up or real, to start fishing around to see, well, what else can we charge this person for, or an alleged investigation, and so forth. Now, what's interesting is, through their so-called training, again, being trained by the wrong people, they are supposedly taught that there's indicators to tell if someone's lying. And there's a lot of videos and a lot of people, it's leaked into mainstream society for many decades. And there's alleged professionals who can read, detect lying and liars and stuff, which is all debunked. There's no mathematical formula as a descriptive to determine any of this stuff. It's just all made up. But even the common person has accepted these myths that have trickled down from the liberal arts, theoretical pseudoscience of psychology. Anyway, I'm digressing here. So during their so-called training, they're taught these so-called indicators. Now, keep in mind, whether these indicators are real or not, now we're dealing with someone's interpretation of, well, does that fit an indicator? Here's the crazy part about these so-called indicators. And keep in mind, the liberal arts, theoretical pseudoscience of psychology, there was somebody from that who put this all together as part of the so-called training package. And they'll say, for example, the person was not cooperating. Okay, that's an indicator. For example, and I'll give you an example, not cooperating. And as Steve Lado mentions, an officer says, can I search your vehicle? You say, no, well, that's not cooperating. So you appear guilty. If you say yes, now you're could be deemed as over complying, and you're deemed guilty. So no matter what you do, in any shade in between, you're deemed guilty. It's a no-win situation, no matter what you do. And there's Michael Wood Jr. I've shown video clips of him saying that the laws are created so they can he uses the F word to mess with whoever they want, which is true. And then we get into an officer's discretion if they want to give a ticket or charge someone or whatever they want to do, which is another topic unto itself. Then we get into police officers simply making things up that they suspected there was something. So you can branch that off with these so-called indicators and say, well, there's these indicators and you have interpretation, and then sometimes they can say, oh, they just make stuff up, and from either taking what somebody says out of context to just blatantly making it all up. The problem with these so-called indicators and the opinions and theories and beliefs and wants and desires, for example, of a police officer, you can't prove anything. And whether the interpretation is legitimate with, no ill intent, or it's being done maliciously, you can't prove. How do you even prove you hurt someone's feelings? Which, with regards to police, it's allegedly disrespecting a police officer. You can't prove any of it, nor can you prove intent of an individual who may have hurt an officer's feelings. You need intent. And if hurting someone's feelings was a crime, every single person would be constantly in jail, because you could just say the wrong thing, especially when you're online doing, like, typing out comments or replies or even posts. One wrong word, boom, you just trigger someone, you hurt their feelings, and here we go on that tangent. So the police need reasonable probable grounds, and they're using these indicators, or they'll use indicators whether they existed or not during an event to support whatever they did, because no one wants to be liable. And it's interesting how the courts, almost all the time, will default that this person, this human being, is a police officer. They have training, and they become more human than human. And I've asked many times over the years, regardless of what profession, where's that magical moment that someone becomes more human than human? We see, for example, how many people have even doctorates in something, whether it be legitimate or something made up, like the liberal arts, theoretical pseudoscience of psychology. You have these degrees, these papers, and everything else, and they're dumber than a bag of nails. They have no social skills, whatever, but they have that piece of paper. And this segues into another tangent topic where, just because someone's qualified on paper, does that mean that they're actually the best person for the job? There could be many variables that will determine if they're the right person for the job or not. So how this all ties into, for example, my story. On May 4th, 2013, the two former officers approached my vehicle. They alleged, and they admitted to, alleged bylaw infraction being a pretext, so that they can fish around thinking that there is some sort of crime being committed or was committed or whatever. They testified to all this. So right off the top, they admitted, yeah, the alleged bylaw stop was a pretext. So the other part of this, with my personal story, and they blatantly lied, and they were contradicting their own statements and each other's statements. They couldn't even get right which one of them allegedly arrested me and for what. The first former officer who testified admitted that I could have, well, actually they both admitted I could have just left, but I stayed. And I explained in other videos why I stayed, because, well, I don't know what's going on, for one thing, and two, if it had anything to do with the female, here's an opportunity now to actually talk to someone, because for many months no one wanted to talk to me. right from when all this began in December 2012. And the first officer admitted that, so basically what happened was they pulled up, the first officer ran to the back of my vehicle, and as he was running back to their vehicle, as a police cube van, he was yelling to him, yeah, that is, and that's all I was able to hear. And I'm thinking, what does he mean? Yeah, that basically, yeah, this is the guy type of thing. So he turned around to approach me, and I asked him, can I help you? Because now I'm thinking, why did he just say that? What's going on? And the female beside me grabbed my arm and was yelling at me, like, don't let them hurt me. And I'm sitting in the middle of this sandwich of nonsense thing, trying to figure out what's going on. So he deemed, whether it be legitimate or not, that my asking, can I help you, with a perplexed look on my face, as being aggressive. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on legitimately. And everything just kind of de-escalated things beyond ridiculous. There's so much wrong with their testimonies. And that's why during my closing summations for the trial proper of the alleged obstruction and alleged assaulting a police officer, I just relied on their testimonies to make the case, which the trial judge, he was on a mission he had to make sure I was convicted, because being convicted of those charges was their defense for the lawsuit, for the permanent injuries and everything else that they did, which I also share in older videos. It wasn't just their concern about my lawsuit, but potential other lawsuits that are related, because they just messed everything up beyond ridiculous. Anyway, I'm digressing. So these two officers admitted to using an alleged bylaw stop as a pretext, and they used these so-called indicators, whether they really thought it was, at the time, thought it was real or not. And I've said I was in a no-win situation, and the fact that he came storming towards me extremely aggressively, and the whole event happened so fast, within seconds. There was so much wrong with the trial proper for the alleged charges, and they needed me convicted, because that was their defense for the lawsuit. And it wasn't only my lawsuit that they had a concern about, it's the other potential lawsuits, if I was found not guilty, from other parties and people who were directly and indirectly involved, for example, such as the female, they had to be worried about. So there was a lot riding on this whole event on May 4th, 2013. So going right back to Steve Lado's talking about, yeah, police can just pull you over or stop you, whatever, and do whatever they want. And they do so with complete immunity. This is the world that we live in. And if it can happen to me, if you think about it, there's really two events to my story. Say three. One kind of ties in with the other. So I learn about sex trafficking, abuse of vulnerable women, which ties into the false allegation with another male co-worker somehow. And that was the first event. I tried to get information to vindicate myself and also help, now that I'm personally involved, which leads into the second major event of my story, the police assault on me, or whatever you want to call it. So there's two major events to my story, and then there's tangents from that, which ultimately leads to police, judicial, and political corruption. There are many times, countless times, where, for example, friends or family will call the police for a wellness check on someone. And many times police end up murdering, killing that individual who they're supposed to be checking up on because maybe somebody thinks they're suicidal or something. The numbers are staggering. They justify it. So my point is, we live in a world today, and the interaction that you have with the police, there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to come out of it okay. Depending on how you want to look at it, more said, more in jest, the best case scenario, you're going to come out of it badly beaten. Worst case scenario is they kill you. And there's so many stories about that. And society just buys into the whole narrative, the official narrative about their role in the courts and everything else. And I suppose for many people, the alternative, the great scope of how inefficient the system is and how corrupt it is just too much for most people. So they have no choice for their own sanity, accept the official narrative. But anyway, that's all I really want to talk about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.